relative, relatively cooler. Um, I was just telling Mike, it was a little later this morning because I was trying to get before this starts and the day starts. I was working with we're working with the Chargers. I've told most of you that we're going to be doing the Jewish Life has put together a Jewish Community Day, but it literally came about because of the temple. Daniel Brotsovsky works for the Chargers in their ticket sales, and so he started talking to him with his boss about doing a Jewish Community Day, especially since the Dodgers are clearly not, they haven't officially said they're not doing a Jewish, but the season's in their last 30 games. It's not happening, folks. Though they haven't officially said that they weren't. But I haven't even engaged with them this year. I just watched every other team in the National League West have a Jewish Community Day. But
And yet you're still a fan.
stop it, John. It's the org. How can I be mad at the three people? I'm not going to let three people who work in the organization ruin, 100 years of tradition. They can't take Sandy Koufax away from me, right? So, no, I mean, it's not right, but like I said, I don't hold the whole history of the organization responsible for it. Uh, but yeah, because I know who made the decision. I know who's making the decision. And I told you before, the sad thing is they're not making the decision because of the Jewish community. I've explained this, and I'll explain it again. It's Andrew Friedman, and it's the leadership of the team, including Stan Kasten. All these people signed off on it, and the reason is, and I don't mind. Are we on Facebook, by the way? Because I don't mind saying this.
We're being live streamed according to this message
Okay,
here.
so I don't mind saying this, that the Dodgers did not do Jewish Community Day the last two seasons because they're not. We're not. He says we're not. So, okay, we are. So, the reason is they don't want to do a Christian Faith Day, and that's why they're not doing Jewish Community Day. So I'm making it very clear. This is not because of us. It's because they don't want to do a Christian day, and and they know that if they do a Jewish day, my argument to them would be that it's an it's an ethnic community, not a religious community. But of course, we are both. So, which one? Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. So the screen. Yeah, that's why. And I think Christians would be pretty annoyed to know that the Dodgers don't want to have a faith day, but I don't know. I mean, I think probably most teams have a Christian faith day, but I know the Dodgers don't. So that's why. That's the reason. Yeah, that's the reason why they don't want to have any faith days. So yeah, as I said, it is not because of the Israel-Palestinian situation. And actually, this decision was made before it, and but I don't know what to say. I mean, the Diamondbacks had a Holocaust survivor throw out the first pitch a month ago, and the Giants have their Jewish Community Day coming up in a week, which is going to be like, well, they're kind of out of the playoffs now, but assumedly it's like not a bad time to do it when you're getting into this time of year. People are even starting. Fine, but listen, the Giants did it, Padres did it, and as I told you before, so did the Diamondbacks. I don't know about the Rockies, by the way. That's true. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know the Angels did it, and I do know that the Red Sox did it, the Yankees did it, the Mets did Jewish Community Day, Miami did. So yeah, one of the largest Jewish markets did not do Jewish Community Day. Listen, if Miami did Jewish Community Day, that'd be the five people that showed up for the Marlins game were Jews. The Mets did it. Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Anyways, so the good news is there will be a Jewish Community Day at the Chargers. We're working on and I shared this in one of the things. We have the mock-up of the hat. They're just waiting. The Chargers are waiting for the final mock-up, but we designed the hat, and this is the hat, folks. It says Barak, it says lightning in Hebrew, and it says Jewish Community Day. Because we don't want to put the Chargers in Hebrew. Sometimes, like the Dodgers, they did that hat. Remember, in Hebrew, they did the Dodger hat, but there's no J sound in Hebrew, so they had to do a Gimel with an apostrophe. Same thing with the Chargers. There's no CH in Hebrew. So yeah, it's a Barak hat. Yeah, you have to, but Barak means lightning, and the Chargers motto is bolt up. So I figured it was a good way to come up with something, one word. It's a tough word in Hebrew. Obviously, in Hebrew, you had Ehud Barak, one of the prime ministers, a general military guy. Barak is used as a, what's the word blitz in Hebrew, right? It's blitz is German for lightning, right? Like blitzkrieg, but we say a blitz.
What
So it's a
Hey,
perfect word.
what
Yes.
about a what about a Star David on the back?
I don't know what, I can't remember if they had an issue with another logo or symbol. I can't remember. I don't know. I don't remember. There were certain rules that they had. We followed the symbols. We followed, I mean, the guidelines.
Gotcha.
But I wanted to put the JLTV logo on. They wouldn't let me do that. No, seriously, they wouldn't. I'm like, we're paying for this. They're like, nah, it doesn't matter. Well, we're guaranteeing the hats, whatever. 300. But I think we'll get it. I mean, I hope we will. Whatever. We're doing it. I'm committed to doing it. Uh, we'll see how good the Chargers will be, but they're supposed to be good. Anyways, folks, it's a game that I don't think the Chargers were going to sell a lot of tickets for. They're playing the Colts, who are not a great team. They're not supposed to be good. But and that's our sports update. But the other update you can hear maybe in the background. Where last week we had some construction going on in the bathroom. We have no construction inside, but we do have construction outside because they are working very hard to get our preschool up and running. We're hoping yeah, we're hoping, we're just waiting for the last sign off from the city for the work we're doing on the playground area. We did some major improvements on the playground. The preschool came to us. When they came to us, they had a grant in order to upgrade a playground area. So we're not paying for it. So it's a lot of work that they're putting on. They're putting a new shade structure over, and it's going to be new turf, and it's going to be really nice. So we're excited that they're coming in and doing that. And we had to add another sink last week. That was the commotion last week, because we had that was the state made us put in another sink. So complying with the ever increasing bureaucracy is part of the joy of what we're doing right now. Permits and things like that, which, by the way, is a perfect segue to what we're reading right now, which is the book of Ezra, which is about permits right now. Honestly, this is what it's about. It's about permits, because we read last week that the Jewish people, as they came back, or the leadership of the Babylonian exile group that came back, one of the first waves, had permits to build a temple. But the permits that they got from the emperor of emperors, the Shah and Shah, the highest king of the world, the Persian emperor, he gave them permission. But getting permission and then being able to build is not always the same. Not in the ancient world and not today. And so what we have here is a problem. And what we read about last week, what we left, was that um, um, that even though um, what happened is the Samaritans, the people who lived in the land, and complained to the Persians and said, "Don't let these people build it." Right, and so they wrote a letter, according to the book of Ezra, that they wrote a letter to Artaxerxes, one of the next emperors, and said, "These Jewish people, every time they build a city, or they build up Jerusalem, every time they get power, they are very bad. They get out of line, and you don't want these people to get out of line." And of course, the emperor goes back and reads the records of what happened under Nebuchadnezzar, under the Babylonians, the previous great empire, and he says, "Oh yeah, you're right. These Jews do not behave." And so he tells the Jews, "You don't have permission to build it." And that's kind of what we finish with, right? It has been found that this city from its earliest times has risen against kings in the rebellion and sedition, right? So, yeah, we're not going to let you build it, right? And so the work stopped, and it says it remained in abeyance until the second year of the reign of King Darius of Persia. So I'm just going to show you real quick, just so you can see on a historical timeline what we're talking about here, because um, this is this was very disheartening, right? Um, this was disheartening to the Jewish community because, look, they thought that they were going to be able to start building, and they are real excited. And here's what happens. I'll show you. So here's the list of kings and when they were able to build. So you can see that during this period right here is when we're talking about. Um, we're talking about this time around here. Artaxerxes is the king who just said, "No, you're not going to be doing that." And then you can see this is happening down here to this king, to King Darius. So this is very disappointing because this goes on for 30 years. This is really, really a bad situation. This is not a 10-month, a 2-year, not even a 10-year delay. This delays them for about 20, 30 years. Now we know that they were already sacrificing. They were already sacrificing in Jerusalem. Immediately they come back and they start sacrificing. We read about that last week. But there's a difference between sacrificing and building God's house. And this is what disturbs them, is that they were building the second temple and they have to stop. And this is the second temple, and this is not at the same, it's not going to ever be as glorious as the Temple of Solomon. Though they did hire, we read again last week, Phoenician craftsmen, the people from Tyre and Sidon who make this wonderful cedar wood. They're trying their best to recapture some of the glory of the temple, but now they're not even going to be able to build it. And that's what we're picking up with today. In chapter 5, and again, we said this book, Ezra, and the next book, Nehemiah, are read together. In the Hebrew Bible, in the Talmud, for example, it's not called Ezra. It's called Ezra Nehemiah. It's not called Ezra. Ezra is not a single book in our understanding of it. And again, we're going to move into Nehemiah either next week or the week after. You'll see that book covers a lot of the same ground, but from a slightly different vantage point, a little Rashomon effect of seeing what Nehemiah says about it versus what Ezra says about it. But now let's read how the people are comforted, or how they get through this disaster, if you will. They're not dying, but it's deeply disheartening and demoralizing to find out, oh, we knew we didn't have political control, but we thought we had some religious freedom, and we thought we were going to be able to have some kind of autonomy. And now they don't. And so it's again a mixture of the religious and the political autonomy. So let's read what happens.
Then the prophets, Haggai the prophet and Zechariah son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews in Judah and Jerusalem, inspired by the God of Israel.
Now, again, well, here it just says B'Shem Ele Yisrael, the God. Again, translation could be with the name of God of Israel upon them. These two guys, Haggai and Zechariah, along with the prophet Malachi, are the last prophets in the Bible. They're the last people that the Bible tells us, and again, the rabbis then later on tell us, they're the last people that get to be called prophets. They're the last. Right? So this is about 450, 430 BCE. Prophecy at this point, the Jewish people say, there's nobody who can speak on behalf of God now and say they're talking to God. These are the last prophets, chronologically. And so their prophecy is, of course, their prophecy is going to be, let's not give up. Now, we read these prophecies. We read these back when we read the prophets a while ago. I don't expect you to remember everything that Haggai and Zechariah exactly did, but they comforted the people. They basically said, yeah, we're living through a bad time here. But in a way, it's not worse than what our ancestors lived through. And it's going to be okay. We're going to be able to do what God told us to do. Let's just not give up faith. So let's read.
Thereupon Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Yeshua, son of Yosadak, began rebuilding the house of God in Jerusalem with the full support of the prophets of God. At once, Tatenai, governor of the province of beyond the river, Shatar Bazanai, and their colleagues descended upon them and said this to them: Who issued orders to you to rebuild this house and complete its furnishing?
So the people listened to a guy in Zechariah, which, by the way, they seem to be some of the only prophets that people actually listen to. Yeah, they were encouraged. They felt, let's see what we can do. And they did. They started building it. Now, you can't really build it without having the people around you who didn't want you to build a temple. They narked on them, right? And so they're right now they're confronting them, these people, and this guy is works for the Persians. You can see by his name, Tatanai. It's a Persian name, um, and this guy Shathar Bozanai. You can see these are good Persian names. Um, they're like, yeah, you don't have permission. And it shows you that they were not in a great situation in the sense that like they're they're risking their lives and their situation. They're going against what the Persians had said. Now, their argument, well, let's see what their argument is.
Then we said to them, What are the names of the men who are engaged in the building? But God watched over the elders of the Jews, and they were not stopped while a report went to Darius and a letter was sent back in reply to it. This is the letter that Tatanai, governor of the province of beyond the river, and Shethar-bozenai and his colleagues, the officials of beyond the river, sent to King Darius.
Right. So there's a little bit of a standoff, and they basically say to him, "Okay, well, you tell the Persians who's in charge of this. Okay, you tell the Persians what's going on. You send it back to the headquarters, right? You send it back to the empire. What's going on? And here's the letter."
They sent a message to him, and this is what was written in it. To King Darius, greetings, and so forth. Be it known to the king that we went to the province of Judah to the house of the great God. It is being rebuilt of hewn stone, and wood is being laid in the walls. The work is being done with dispatch and is going well. Thereupon we directed this question to these elders: Who issued orders to you to rebuild this house and to complete its furnishings? We also asked their names so that we could write down the names of their leaders for your information. This is what they answered us. We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth. We are rebuilding the house that was originally built many years ago. A great king of Israel built it and completed it. But because our fathers angered the God of heaven, he handed them over to Nebuchadnezzar the Chaldean, king of Babylon, who demolished this house and exiled the people to Babylon. But in the first year of King Cyrus of Babylon, King Cyrus issued an order to rebuild this house of God. Also, the silver and gold vessels of the house of God that Nebuchadnezzar had taken away from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to the temple in Babylon, King Cyrus released them from the temple in Babylon to be given to the one called Sheshbazzar, whom he had appointed governor. He said to him, Take these vessels, go, deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be rebuilt on its original site.
Yeah, it's still going on. This is their letter back. This is our letter back, the Jews' letter back to the Persians in response to this. Of course, what they're saying is, Cyrus told us we could go back. They reminded the Persians, yeah, the great king who established this dynasty, He's the one who told us we could go back. And he gave us this stuff to build it. And he gave us the blessing. Like we were told to go back. This is not our, was not our instruction. We didn't do this on our own. This was from Cyrus.
That same Sheshbazzar then came and laid the foundations for the house of God in Jerusalem. And ever since then it has been under construction, but is not yet finished. And now, if it please the king, let the royal archives there in Babylon be searched to see whether indeed an order had been issued by King Cyrus to rebuild this house of God in Jerusalem. May the king convey to us his pleasure in this matter.
Right. And so they write to Darius. Look, Cyrus gave us permission. Cyrus gave us permission. He gave us the stuff from the Babylonians, the stuff that the Babylonians had stolen from us. They gave it back to us, and he sent it back. And then he said, and go back in the records and see whether or not that's true. Right? We know it's true. We're so sure if it's true, you go back and look at it. Now, what of course they left out is that, and then the permit was pulled from us. And then the next king told us not to do it. They didn't say that. They didn't say that, right? It's really clever what they said. You just say it's not finished. You didn't say why it's not finished. You didn't say Artaxerxes told us not to finish it. The next guys, the people complained about us, found out that we were really a problem once we get a little bit of power. They left that part out, which, I mean, come on, that's smart. If you, if you have a problem, you don't remind people of your problem, right? Especially when you're trying to get permission for something. And by the way, we really screwed up a bunch of times. No, they just say we haven't finished it. That's what they said. It's not finished. They didn't say why it's not finished. Yeah, it's too much information, right? And sometimes people do that. They dig themselves a hole by talking too much and by telling people the problem, and they reintroduce the problem. You don't have to tell people everything. First of all, they say the truth. They just omitted part of the story. They didn't tell the whole story. They didn't say why we've stopped. And again, you're under no obligation to remind people of your screw ups. You can, if you want to be, completely forthright, and you want to, you don't want them to find out about it later. But on the other hand, why do it? Maybe this is enough. This is a new king. So that's why, again, think about it. There's a little lesson here about how to communicate, especially in matters of government. So they say, let it, you know it. So it's the way chapter 5 finishes, but it's not the way this part of the story finishes. Let's keep going.
Thereupon, at the order of King Darius, they searched the archives where the treasures were stored in Babylon. But it was in the citadel of Ecbatana in the province of Media that a scroll was found in which the following was written. Memorandum. In the first year of King Cyrus issued an order concerning the house of God in Jerusalem. Let the house be rebuilt, a place for offering sacrifices with a base built up high. Let it be 60 cubits high and 60 cubits wide, with a course of unused timber for each of 3 courses of hewn stone. The expenses shall be paid by the palace. And the gold and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken away from the temple in Jerusalem and transported to Babylon, shall be returned. And let each go back to the temple in Jerusalem where it belongs. You shall deposit it in the house of God.
So they found it. They found the memorandum. They found the note. They found Cyrus's letter. They found the proof. It's right there. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that, a few years have passed, a couple decades have passed. So, yeah, there might not even be anybody who remembered exactly where the letter was. And they didn't know where it was at first. They found it in a different archive. It was not they didn't find it on that one computer, right? They didn't find it on the computer. They found it in somebody's filing cabinet. So they found it. And that happens. That kind of stuff happens. And that, by the way, to some extent leads, of course, to the credibility of this, which is that, oh, it's Cyrus. Everyone loves Cyrus. By the way, they do. I mean, Cyrus is considered to be the founder of this dynasty. So when people still go back in Persia or Iran today, they talk about Cyrus. He's still the guy that they talk about as the, you know, the great hero. He's their King David, if you will. So, yeah, they love Cyrus. And so having Cyrus be the guy who gave you the blessings is pretty key. And it says that like they're paying for it. We're paying for part of the construction here. We, the Persian Empire, are so in favor of this that we're paying for it. So this is all really good information, right? Of course, nothing's ever as simple as that. And we know that there's a backstory. We know the backstory is it got halted. That's the way we ended last week was no, but they pulled the plug on it. So here we go.
Now you, Tatanai, governor of the province of Beyond the River, Shatar Bazanai and colleagues, the officials of the province of Beyond the River, stay away from that place. Allow the work of this house of God to go on. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews rebuild this house of God on its site. And I hereby issue an order concerning what you must do to help these elders of the Jews rebuild this house of God. The expenses are to be paid to these men with dispatch out of the resources of the king, derived from the taxes of the province of Beyond the River, so that the work not be stopped. They are to be given daily, without fail, whatever they need of young bulls, rams, or lambs as burnt offerings for the God of heaven, and wheat, salt, wine, and oil, at the order of the priests in Jerusalem, so that they may offer pleasing sacrifices to the God of heaven and pray for the life of the king and his sons. I also issue an order that whoever alters this decree shall have a beam removed from his house, and he shall be impaled upon it, and his house confiscated. And may the God who established his name there cause the downfall of any king or nation that undertakes to alter or damage that house of God in Jerusalem. I, Darius, have issued the decree. Let it be carried out with dispatch.
Yeah. So Darius comes in to save the day. Darius. Now, any comments, questions? First of all, this whole letter is in Aramaic. It's in Aramaic and it's given back to us in Aramaic, right? This is, Asparna Yatavit. Asparna, you can hear is sounds like Kol Nidre. Yeah. So this is the letter. Again, this book was not written 100, 200 years after the events. This was written like at the time. That's why this does not sound mythological. This does not sound, like somebody told the story for 150, 250, 350 years and then they wrote it down. This sounds like somebody heard it 2 weeks ago and wrote it down. They had a copy of the letter maybe and wrote it down. But this is huge, right? This is the permission to get the job done, which is, yeah, now you have a chance to do this. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody see anything here that sticks out in your mind as you read this? This bureaucratic back and forth. Anybody?
But until they started talking about the punishments, it sounded very modern.
Yeah, that last part sounded a little ancient. We take a beam out of your house and then put you on it. Yeah, which destroys your house and makes for a really bad day for you. Yeah, it's a very drastic consequence. Sounds a little bit like Haman and his sons. Yeah, so it does sound kind of modern. It does sound that kind of permission. And again, the interesting thing is Israel kind of dealt with this, right? Because, Israel was, John and I just had an interchange. John found an article about the Balfour Declaration, which is very famous because it was the declaration by the British to basically say, we want the Jews to have a homeland in their land. And it was written by, people. There were opposing groups in England at the time. There were some that were pretty Zionist, and some of them were Christian Zionists, and some of them were just like practical Zionists. I think like Winston Churchill was a practical Zionist. He liked the idea of a bunch of Western leaning people in the Middle East who would be more supportive of British and Western needs, right? He was kind of practical about it. He was not a super churchy guy, to put it mildly. Uh, on the other hand, there were other really, very, you know, um, very religious Christians in England who really believed that, like, let's do this. And that goes back, by the way, to the 1600s. I mean, that goes back to one of the first religious Zionists in England, Lord Cromwell, who led the revolt against the British monarchy. Cromwell was the guy who let Jews back, and he thought maybe this will start the second coming, and was a big believer in this. So there were opposing groups in Britain, and then of course there was the people who did not like Jews going back. There's always a healthy dose of anti-Semites in England, and of course then there were the people who were like the Arabists, somewhat led by T. Lawrence and Lawrence of Arabia, and the people who were like, hey, there's a whole lot more Arabs there than there are Jews. Maybe we should help them so that we get their oil. And that was a really big argument. But, and that's really kind of why the British sat on this for a while, right? So the British gave permission for the Jews after World War I to go back and establish the homeland. And obviously some Jews had already come there in the first waves in the 1800s. And then they started coming, and they were coming at the same time that your relatives were coming to America from Russia and Ukraine and Poland. There were Jews coming to Israel during the same time. And the British were like, okay, these Jews are coming back. They can do this. And so when we take the land from the Turks, we're going to give it to the Jews. And that was the Balfour Declaration. And then, of course, things went downhill, right? Because then World War II started, and the British needed oil. They needed the support of the Arabs. They needed those people to not get out of line, right? And so they turned and they flipped. And they, of course, then went through a period of time where it was very hard for Israel to be established under the British mandate, because the British kind of turned on that. And of course, that meant that Jewish people died in the Holocaust because Britain wouldn't let them come to Israel. So that's part of the history, unfortunately. So
Second Amendment, folks.
so that was the British mandate from, let's say, 1920 to 1947, when they were so sick and tired of having to make decisions to either upset Jews or upset, and Christians to some extent, or upset Muslims and Arabs, that they said, you know what, United Nations, you take it over. And that was 1947. But for 20 years, Israel dealt with this very similar situation of being caught by the power, if you will, at the time, during the time of Ezra, that was the Persians, and during the time of David Ben Gurion and those people, Chaim Weizmann, it was the British who made the call. And then there's always bigger politics in the background. And of course, what we learn here, I want you to see if anybody caught this. It's not like this was a big deal for the Persians. This is like an afterthought for the Persians. And to some extent, look, the British had other things to worry about. They had India that was falling apart, right? That was asking for, well, I would say asking, demanding, protesting for their independence during the time of Gandhi. And then you had other parts of their empire that was, that were collapsing. So it wasn't like Israel was the only thing the British had to worry about. And this is not the only thing the Persians have to deal with, because the Persians are starting to ramp up their confrontation with the Greeks. They don't need this. They don't need headaches like this. This is a minor headache. Look, this area isn't even Judah. Like, Judah is part of this area. Remember? Take a look. What do they call this area? The land beyond the province of beyond the river. They would call it Israel. It's not Judah. It's part of the province, which includes modern day Jordan, which again was Ammon and Moab and Edom, and it included Syria, which is, all of this is the land. They called it Avar Nahara, the land beyond the river. beyond the Tigris River, which is a huge area. Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel. This is just part of it. And for them, this is just part of that province. So this isn't even a state. This is like a part of the state. And that to them, let's keep them happy. And what we don't know is what kind of behind the scenes deals went on to get Darius to do the right thing here, right? We don't know how it happened because there was probably somebody pulling the strings in the background. Somebody else had to be there to say, yeah, come on. And who could it have been? Well, I'll tell you who it could have been. It could have been people like Mordecai and Esther. Now, again, we have no record that there was a Queen Esther, but we do know that there were Jews that were in the court at the time. Right? So if there was a Jew who was in the court in Ecbatana or in Susa, Shushan, who's also got a little bit of, hey, what about the Jews, right? Our people, we promised them, the Persians promised them. So what the Jews had is what we still have, and I hope we always have. It's not just people in the land of Israel, but people who are back in the other countries who say, don't forget. And that's what APAC does here in America, That's what people in England can do back in England, or what Jews can do in different parts of the world where they're at, is they say, don't forget. Don't forget your connection there. So that's really what happened, right? So there's a little bit of difference. Maybe because the Samaritans and these other people who are living in the land of Israel don't have any pull back in the Persian court. It makes a difference. Now you're saying, well, maybe they did. Yeah, but if they did, it was a fluke, because the Jewish people are the first people now who are like, yeah, we're in Israel, but we're also other places. We're not just a nation that's located there. We also have some of our people here. And that's a difference, right? That's the difference. Because again, just show you real quick, just a real quick share of this is that just so you can see again what we're talking. And again, here's the empire. I'll show you a little map how big this empire was, right? This is the empire. This is Israel. Well, look at how big the empire is, right? The empire goes all the way from India. And we know this, right? From the story of Esther. Hodu ad Kush, from India to Egypt to Sudan. And of course, at the time, all the way into Greece, right? This is all Greece. Now, they're not down here in the Peloponnesian, this is like where Athens and Sparta and stuff like that are, but they end up getting into that area, right? That's when they start fighting here, the Battle of Marathon and those kind of battles. Yeah, that's how big the Persian Empire is. So this is nothing, like half of it. So their area they're talking about here, this province is this area right here. That's their province. And again, what we're talking about here during this time is right around this time. Actually, this is a mistake. This Artaxerxes that's not correct. It was, it's this part, because this is the Darius. It's not this Darius, it's this Darius. There's two Dariuses. There are actually three Dariuses. The last king is Darius. So, the time of Esther is during the time of Hashverosh is Xerxes. There's also Artaxerxes, but there's Xerxes, and that is Hashverosh. And you can see here he is right here. Xerxes is the Greek version of his name. You can see these were his real wives. So, Let me just show you. Yeah, here's all about Xerxes, Ahasuerus. I'm just going to show you. Yeah, so he's the guy who we read about in Purim. So it's around this time, you know. All right. Somebody else had a question or comment. Okay. Rosemary is just taking a moment. So yeah, that's a little description of what we're talking about here is this area right here. So what are these people going to do? What are these people going to do during this they've been given permission by the Persians to go back. And here's the line it says, then Tatanai, the governor of the province of the governor of the province of beyond the river, Shetar Bozanai and their colleagues carried out with the dispatch that the King Darius had written. So the elders of the Jews progressed in the building, urged on by the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah son of Iddo. And they brought the building to completion under the aegis of the God of Israel by the order of Cyrus and Darius and King Artaxerxes of Persia. So Artaxerxes, as you saw, was Darius's son. So those kings are the ones that it was actually completed over. And it says that the house was finished on the 3rd of the month of Adar in the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. So the Israelites, the priests, and the Levites, and all the other exiles celebrated the dedication of the house of God with joy. So you can see when it was actually finished, everybody who came back celebrated. And it says, and they sacrificed for the dedication of this house of God 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and 12 goats as a purification offering for all Israel, according to the number of the tribes of Israel. So they went back to the tradition of 12 tribes, even though there aren't really 12 tribes anymore, right? The northern tribes aren't there. But they kept the biblical traditions going. They kept the traditions going of what King Solomon did and what the other kings did in Jerusalem. And it's an enormous amount of animals. You can see the amount of animals goes up as the cost goes down, right? Except for the goats, right? Because the goats are just 12, one for every tribe. And that's almost like an additional sacrifice after you go through the bulls, the rams, and the lambs. So they go through this big sacrifice, and as you can see, they called it Hanukkot Beit Eloha, which is a Hanukkah, a dedication. So you can see the word Hanukkah is already used in the Bible to describe a dedication or a rededication of the temple. So when we took the name Hanukkah, when the Maccabees did, they weren't making up a word. They took the word that was used for the dedication the first time when the temple was rededicated for the second time. So they didn't call theirs the third temple. The Maccabees don't call it the third temple. Maybe call it 2.5. It was really a third temple because they started from the ground up to some extent, or they did a lot. And then, of course, King Herod, a few years later, has a temple that's not even recognizable from those two temples. So whatever you want to call it, this is still the second temple, and the fact that it wasn't destroyed after this until the Romans, but it goes through several phases of construction. And it seems like this phase of construction just wasn't elaborate enough for some people, but it's still great. And they have priests And they appointed the priests in their courses and the Levites in their divisions for the service of God in Jerusalem, according to the prescription of the book of Moses. And it says, Sefer Moshe. So that is what they called the Torah at that moment. We know that for a fact. This is the book of Moses. Now, is this all of the Torah? Is this the book of Deuteronomy? We're not sure. But we know some part of the Torah at this point is called the book of Moses. It's not called the 5 books. We don't know that Genesis is necessarily a part of this Exodus. We don't know. We know that there's a book that they followed as a guideline called Sefer Moshe, a book of Moses. Now, it also says the book of Moses. It doesn't say the books of Moses. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to say the 5 books of the Torah, even though, again, we don't think that there were even 5 books necessarily of the Torah yet. But whatever there is, they called the Bible, and as they knew it, their blueprint. And it was very much a blueprint. They called it Sefer Moshe. So this is what they followed. They didn't make this stuff up, is what they're saying. We follow the directions of what happened at this point now about 100 years ago. It's not quite 100 years, but it's pretty close to about 100 years ago that they last made these sacrifices. All right, Rosemary, continue, if you will.
The returned exiles celebrated the Passover on the 14th day of the first month, for the priests and Levites had purified themselves to a man. They were all pure. They slaughtered the Passover offering for all the returned exiles and for their brother priests and for themselves. The children of Israel who had returned from the exile, together with all who joined them in separating themselves from the uncleanliness of the nations of the lands to worship the Lord God of Israel, ate of it.
So let's pause right there, because read between the lines. Not really have to read that far between the lines. You can see that there is a difference in their minds between the people who returned from exile with the people who joined, or the people who lived in the land already. Because there were people, it says, who left those people and went with them, the returning exiles, to worship God. So the word that they used in Hebrew to describe the people who kind of opposed them, where they called them Goy Haaretz, which they translate as nations of the land. That's fine. That's not necessarily a bad translation, other than the fact that these people that they're calling Goyim are probably other Israelites and Jews. They just weren't their group. And so this we don't have their side of the story, right? We don't have the side of the story of the people who lived in the land for the last 75 years, maybe worshiping God in their own way, who are like, these people came back to rebuild Jerusalem, and now they're taking over and they're doing their sacrifices again. And they look down on us like we're Goyim, like we're not real Jews. We don't have their side of it. We kind of do from the Samaritans, but we don't. They didn't write a lot about this, the Samaritans, and we don't have it. We don't have their, but we can imagine what it was like. We can imagine what it'd be like for Jews we don't need to worship in Jerusalem. The temple was destroyed 70, 80 years ago, and we're doing just fine. We're living in the land. We don't need it. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing to kind of play as an experiment, a thought experiment. What would it have been like for the Jews who just said, I don't need Jerusalem. I don't need the house of God. I can worship God in my backyard. Now, nowadays we kind of have that attitude because we don't believe that there needs to be one temple where we worship God. So we as Jews today have a different mentality when it comes to this, right? We don't think about God only being in one place, even when it comes to Israel. There are Jews, I'm not saying there aren't, who say, we have to have Israel to pray in, but most, even Orthodox Jews, know that we've lived for 2,000 years. It hasn't been the same, but we could still worship God not there. And we've had Israel now for 76 years, 77 years this year, and we didn't rebuild the temple. We have no temple there that we're worshiping in. So it's not like we have to have it. So it's hard for us to imagine this because to some extent we don't believe it anymore. But for our ancestors, the idea of worshiping in the temple of God in Jerusalem versus not might have been, a big deal. It might have been a really, really big deal for them. And we know that some of those Jews decided to be with the returning exiles and be with them, because it says again, together with all who join them in separating themselves from the uncleanness, right? The uncleanliness, the tmuat, the unholy way that these people were worshiping before. So some of them came along. Some of the Jews decided to go with these returning exiles. It's interesting to think about, like, what did it mean for the other people who didn't? And here's what they did.
They joyfully celebrated the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days, for the Lord had given them cause for joy by inclining the heart of the Assyrian king toward them, so as to give them support in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel.
Yeah, that last part seems kind of strange because it's not an Assyrian king, right? It's Persian. Where did that come from? Because like everything seems to be like really accurate. I mean, the reporting seems like we're right there. I mean, there was a little mistake that they made, and it's been pointed out that Artaxerxes was not the king who pulled the plug on the stuff. It wasn't Artaxerxes. That's a mistake. And this is just a blatant mistake, which is how do they get this so wrong? These are not the Assyrians who did it. So look, there's traditional explanations for why the Persian king becomes an Assyrian king, that he's, his ancestry was Assyrian. It's not incorrect. People are trying to find reasons for this not to be wrong, but it seems like it's just a scribal error, or somebody just was lazy about it, or maybe they were making a political statement. I mean, this isn't the case. They weren't Assyrian, they were Persian. And of course, what's really the big deal? They're celebrating Passover, right? They're celebrating Passover there. And that's, a big deal, celebrating a holiday in Jerusalem. Any questions? Any comments? Well, let's continue.
After these events, during the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, Ezra, son of Sariah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Azariah, son of Mariot, son of Zerahiah, son of Uzi, son of Buki, son of Abishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the chief priest.
Wait, so in case you missed
his genealogy all the way back to Aaron.
In case you missed it, Ezra, who wrote this book, just told us, look at my genealogy, right? I'm going to go all the way back to Aaron. I'm going back 500 years. I'm going to give you all my ancestors. It's not enough I go back to Zadok, right? The priest during the time of King David. I'm going to go back even further, right? I'm going to go back all the way back to this stuff. Now, this can't be all of his ancestors. Can't be. It's not. It doesn't go back far enough. I mean, that's not enough generations. This is 700 years after. This is 700 years after. There's some people missing here. Okay. I'm just telling you. I mean, there's just not enough generations to go back. This is the 400s, and we're going back 600 years, 500 and something years. It's not enough generations. Now, doesn't matter. Look, the fact is, this guy's a priest. He's, he's legitimate priest of Kohanim, right? And we're going to know right away that now, by the way, 7 chapters. This is the 7th chapter. We're finally going to hear this guy's story. Now, again, Ezra is arguably the most important person in Jewish history since King David. And again, King David is somewhat mythical, so we don't know everything of everything that it says that King David did. He did. But you have to go back that far. You have to go back 500 years to get 600 years to get to the last person who shapes Jewish history as much as this guy does. And we'll talk about why. But what Ezra talks about is that he's a priest. That's what he talks about, right? He starts off reminding us of his priestly connections. And again, for priests, your connections and your genealogy is most important, which is why when we see genealogies in the Bible, we generally go, oh, that's a priestly author. That's a priest trying to tell you what his lineage is. And again, the irony, I'd say to some extent, is this can't be a complete lineage. It can't be. I mean, every one of these people would have to have lived for 100 years for this to be a genealogy, right? But you can see, very important, his genealogy, because he's a priest. But that's not all he is. He's a lot more than a priest.
That Ezra came up from Babylon, a scribe expert in the teaching of Moses, which the Lord God of Israel had given, whose request the king had granted in its entirety, thanks to the benevolence of the Lord toward him.
So that's the next thing we know he is. We know he's a priest, and we also know he's a scribe. And he's not just a scribe. It's not like he just copies the laws down, copies texts. He is an expert in the teaching of Moses, right? And here, it's not just called the scroll or a book, it's called Torah Moshe, the teaching of Moses. And not only is it the Torah Moshe, but it's a Torah Moshe which God had given. This is not Moses' book. I mean, it is. It is teaching of Moses. But it's not just the teaching of Moses, because it's the book that God had given. So Ezra is not just a priest, he's also a scribe. We call in Hebrew a sofer. But he's not just a sofer in the sense that, again, he's not just a scribe, but he is a teacher. He's an expert in the Torah. So he's a priest, he's a scribe, and we're going to see some other stuff that he is too. But those are his qualifications: priest, scribe, and to some extent teacher, you'd say, because I don't want you to think a scribe is just a guy who copies down books. So he is, it says right at the beginning, right? Coming back. And what does it say? Here we go.
Some of the Israelites, the priests and Levites, the singers, the gatekeepers, and the temple servants set out for Jerusalem in the 7th year of the king Artaxerxes, arriving in Jerusalem in the 5th month in the 7th year of the king.
Yeah. Folks, that means that not all the Jews went up at the same time. Shouldn't be a surprise. It's not like it had to happen, right? there you see it, right? The temple's built during this period. And this is the time of Esther. And here's the time here. Which is why when people study the book of Esther, and when especially our tradition studies the book of Esther, people like to say it's more than just a story of a queen saving the Jews from Haman, but it helps shift what was happening at the time. The intrigue of having all of this stuff happen, if you line it up, is that Mordecai and those kind of people in the court of the kings of Persia are able to make sure that the Jews are taken care of. But what you also are getting from here is a sense that some of the Jews went up right away, and some of them did not go up right away. Right? Not every not every Jew made Aliyah to Israel in 1948. And they had been coming up before. They had been coming up after. And they're still coming today. Right? So it's not like everybody said, oh, it's time to go to Israel. We were all able to come back. True story. 5 days ago. It's in the news. Some of you might have seen this. This just happened. This just happened, my friends. August 20th. 225 Olim from North America came on one plane ride. 225 of your American Jewish brothers and sisters. Well, some were from Canada too. Yep. This August, we'll see more than 1,000 new immigrants arriving in Israel. The highest monthly total in over 20 years. Since October 7th, over 7,000 new immigrants from North America have made Aliyah. 7,000 Americans and Canadians. And I guess Mexicans are included in that list too. They're North America. Yep. Right now, around us. That's what's happening. So, yeah. The fact that a few years later, there were still people coming up with Ezra, it's not surprising because it's happening right now. We're witnessing this same history happen right now. Yep.
On the first day of the first month, the journey up from Babylon was started, and on the first day of the 5th month, he arrived in Jerusalem, thanks to the benevolent care of his God for him. For Ezra had dedicated himself to study the teaching of the Lord, so as to observe it and to teach laws and rules to Israel. The following is the text of the letter which King Artaxerxes gave Ezra the priest scribe, a scholar in matters concerning the commandments of the Lord and his laws, to Israel. Artaxerxes, king of kings, to Ezra the priest, scholar in the law of God of heaven, and so forth. And now I hereby issue an order that anyone in my kingdom who is of the people of Israel and its priests and Levites, who feels impelled to go to Jerusalem, may go with you. For you are commissioned by the king and his 7 advisors to regulate Judah and Jerusalem according to the law of your God, which is in your care, and to bring the freewill offering of silver and gold, which the king and his advisors made to the God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem, and whatever silver and gold that you find throughout the province of Babylon, together with the freewill offerings that the people and the priests will give you for the house of their God, which is in Jerusalem. You shall, therefore, with dispatch, Acquire with this money bulls, rams, and lambs with their meal offerings and libations, and offer them on the altar of the house of your God in Jerusalem. And whatever you wish to do with the leftover silver and gold, you and your kinsmen may do in accordance with the will of your God. The vessels for the service of the house of your God that are given to you, deliver to God in Jerusalem. And any other needs of the house of your God that it falls to you to supply, do so from the royal treasury. I, King Artaxerxes, for my part, hereby issue an order to all the treasurers in the province of beyond the river that whatever request Ezra the priest, scholar in the law of the God of heaven, makes of you is to be fulfilled with dispatch, up to the sum of 100 talents of silver, 100 kor of wheat, 100 bath of wine, 100 bath of oil, and salt without limit. Whatever is by order of the God of heaven must be carried out diligently for the house of the God of heaven, else wrath will come upon the king and his sons. We further advise you that it is not permissible to impose tribute, poll tax, or land tax on any priest, Levite, singer, gatekeeper, temple servant, or other servant of this house of God. And you, Ezra, by the divine wisdom you possess, appoint magistrates and judges to judge all the people in the province of beyond the river who know the laws of your God, and to teach those who do not know them. Let anyone who does not obey the law of your God and the law of the king be punished with dispatch, whether by death, corporal punishment, confiscation of possessions, or imprisonment. Blessed is the Lord God of our fathers, who put it into the mind of the king to glorify the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, and to incline the king and his counselors and the king's military officers to be favorably disposed toward me. For my part, thanks to the care of the Lord for me, I summoned up courage and assembled leading men in Israel to go with me.
Yep. And so you can see Ezra has permission to lead this group, which seems like almost another whole, I mean, considering that we already had this wave under Sheshbazzar that was able to build a temple and to do all these things, there's another group now that goes up. So what do we see that Ezra is? He's a priest, he's a scribe, teacher. He's also clearly a religious and political leader. Now, this wave of immigrants that comes up is clearly significant. It's a clearly significant wave. Ezra's already told us, this book has already told us that there's already people that have gone up. We know that. They, to some extent, done the hard part. They built the temple. They got the permits. They went through the struggles. And now they're coming in these next waves. Now, obviously, this is Ezra. I mean, the book is called the Book of Ezra. Ezra is the editor of this book, probably the writer of this book. Definitely approves of this book. So, you know, we're not going to get maybe the other side of this, which is, you know, do the people who are already living there really need to have another wave of people? Maybe they need the people, but do they need somebody else coming there who has authority to do stuff? Like, don't they have authority to do stuff? This guy says, I got a letter from the king of Persia, which tells me, you know, again, I got a budget, right? I got a budget up to 100 talents of silver. And it goes through the wheat and the wine and all these other things that he gets too. I mean, it's not a ridiculous, by the way, amount of money. I mean, it's good. It's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it's not ridiculous. It's not like an unbelievable amount of money. It's very believable. A very believable amount of stuff that he's given. Again, it doesn't really say why the Persians are being so good to Ezra. It doesn't explain that. We don't know. Again, when you look at the traditional sources, it's that, you know, there's Jews in the Persian court like Mordecai who were there directing this stuff. We got into the inner circle. And it's possible. It's possible that we did. It's also possible that if you read between the lines and you read the book of Esther between the lines, which again is much more mythological than this, and it's a lot more. Again, we mentioned it while we read the book of Esther. There's no historical evidence that any of that happened. But what we do read between the lines in that story, and we can kind of get it from here too, is that there were Jews all over the empire. And so the Persians, by doing what is good for the Jews, are not only helping the people in Israel, they're helping all the people in their empire who were Jewish. It's making them feel good. So by helping Ezra and by giving stuff to them, they are helping the Jews in their own kingdom. Does that happen today? Yes. Are there people who try to make Jews and evangelical Christians who really love Israel, do they make them happy and get their votes by making sure Israel has what they need? Yes, very much so. Not that different. It's not remarkably different. Yes, we're not getting 100 talents of silver and wheat and wine, but we are getting missile defense systems, and we are getting F-35s, and it's not just for the sake of Israel. It's also for the sake of the people who vote for people here. Interesting, right? It's a little reminiscent of ancient history. So, again, Persians very well disposed to us at this point, and of course, Ezra is very excited about it, and he says he summoned the courage. Right? Still took a little bit of, he's leaving his maybe comfortable situation in Persian Empire. Doesn't exactly say where he's living, but he's living somewhere in the Persian Empire, and he goes back to Israel. So this is a guy who is priest, scribe, and now leader, political leader. And that's what we're going to read. The rest of Ezra is about what he does on his journey. So if this is his book, he's only in the book for the last few chapters. But what he does in these few chapters is pretty important. And that's why, again, when you read what's here and what you read between the lines, what he doesn't say or what he alludes to, he's pretty powerful, a pretty powerful guy. Let's read.
These are the chiefs of the clans and the
Wait,
registered.
and by the way, I apologize in advance, Rosemary, for chapter 9. Let me just say, I apologize for what you're about to get, but here you go.
Well, I'll do my best.
Yes.
These are the chiefs of the clans and the register of the genealogy of those who came up with me from Babylon in the reign of King Artaxerxes. Of the sons of Phinehas, Gershom. Of the sons of Ithamar, Daniel. Of the sons of David, Hattush. Of the sons of Shechaniah, of the sons of Parosh, Zechariah. Through him, the genealogy of 150 males was registered. Elihonai, the son of Zerahiah, of the sons of Tathat Moab, and with him 200 males. Of the sons of Shechaniah, the son of Yahaziel, and with him 300 males. And of the sons of Adin, Ebed, son of Jonathan, and with him 50 males. And of the sons of Elam, Yeshaiah, son of Ataliah, and with him 70 males. And of the sons of Shephatiah, Zebediah, son of Michael, and with him 80 males. Of the sons of Joab, Obadiah, son of Yehiel, and with him 218 males. And of the sons of Shelomit, the sons of Josephiah, and with him 160 males. And of the sons of Bevi, Zechariah, son of Bevi, and with him 28 males. And of the sons of Azgad, Yochanan, son of Hakatan, and with him 110 males. And of the sons of Adonikam, who were the last, and these are their names, Eliphelet, Yeiel, and Shemaiah, and with them 60 males. And of the sons of Bigvai, Utai, and Zakur, and with them 70 males. These I assembled.
Okay, so you have this list of people. This list of men. Because very clearly these are guys, right? Uh, and again, we mentioned this before last week when we looked at this list of Persian names that or names that come up. Some are Persian names and some are Jewish names. So some Jews are continuing to name their kids good Jewish names, like Yosiphiah, or it's got the name Yah in it, or Yechiel, which has El, or Ovadia, which is Obadiah, has God's name, Lord's name in it. Yoav. These are all good biblical names, people name. But then, of course, when we have Babai and we have Azgad, and we have very Persian name, Bigvai. So some take on Persian names, and other people, they take on a Persian name, but then their kids' names are Hebrew names. So happens then too. But this is, again, these are men, and they're going to see why this is important. Any questions or comments with this genealogies? Again, genealogy is very important for priests. And as you can see, male genealogies based on the fathers, right? Based on their fathers and grandfathers. By the way, my phone, as you might have been hearing, it was lighting up. I was getting a million texts because, of course, Taylor Swift got engaged. So my family is very excited.
Mine too.
It's such wonderful news that I
just
had
got
to
that
be,
text
had,
too.
had to be disturbed during class with that. But anyways, yeah. Now, of course, the whole world will be talking about that today. So I hope there was no other news that anybody had. I hope there was no other news that was important. I hope no laws were passed or any wars were started, because they are now second to this. Sorry, everybody. I hope there's no African country that got invaded today, because no one cares. Oh, there it goes. All right. So these are the guys. These are the men. I say guys, these are men that get together. And what happens, guys, when we get together?
These I assembled by the river that enters Ahava, and we encamped there for 3 days. I reviewed the people and the priests, but I did not find any Levites there. I sent for Eliezer, Ariel, Shemaiah, Elnathan, Yariv, Elnathan, Nathan, Zechariah, and Meshulam, the leading men, and also for Yoariv and Elnathan, the instructors. And I gave them an order for Iddo, the leader at the place called Kasiphia. I gave them a message to convey to Iddo and his brother, temple servants at the place called Kasiphia, that they should bring us attendants for the house of our God. Thanks to the benevolent care of our God for us, they brought us a capable man of the family of Machli, son of Levi, son of Israel, and Sherebiah and his sons and brothers, 18 in all, and Hashabiah, and with him Yeshaiah of the family of Merari, his brothers and their sons, 20 in all. And of the temple servants whom David and the officers had appointed for the service of the Levites, 220 temple servants, all of them listed by name. I proclaimed a fast there by the Ahava River to afflict ourselves before our God, to beseech him for a smooth journey for us and for our children and for all our possessions.
So on his way back home to Israel, I say back home, remember this guy Ezra was born and lives his first part of his life in Persia, in the Persian Empire. He's coming home, he's coming back, and he's saying, hey, there's no Levites. Where are Levites, Mike Schwartz? There's no Levites here. So he says, we better get some Levites. And so they do. They do. They get some Levites. And then he also realizes, look, we got to prepare ourselves for this. We got to prepare ourselves for this big undertaking. It's not just a physical journey, it's a spiritual journey. We're making aliyah. And so they say, we're gonna purify ourselves. We're gonna have a fast. We're gonna have a fast by the Ahava River. And this is modern day Iraq today. We're gonna have a fast. We're gonna purify ourselves, and we're gonna get ready. Now, we are going to cleansing the body is part of the issue here. Well, let's watch what happens.
For I was ashamed to ask the king for soldiers and horsemen to protect us against any enemy on the way, since we had told the king, the benevolent care of our God is for all who seek him, while his fierce anger is against all who forsake him. So we fasted and besought our God for this, and he responded to our plea. Then I selected 12 of the chiefs of the priests, namely Sherebiah and Hashabiah, with 10 of their brothers, and I weighed out to them the silver, the gold, and the vessels, the contribution to the house of our God, which the king, his counselors and officers, and all Israel who were present had made. I entrusted to their safekeeping the weight of 650 talents of silver, 100 silver vessels of 1 talent each, 100 talents of gold, also 20 gold bowls worth 100 darics, and 2 vessels of good shining bronze, as precious as gold.
And again, you heard how much money he got from the king, but he's coming back with even more, right? Because he got 100 talents of silver, but he's coming back with 650 talents of silver, which is 6 times more than he was given. 100 vessels, 100 vessels that are each 1 talent each, and on top of that, 100 talents of gold. So this is a lot of value, and then of course all the other stuff that's made out of gold. So this is quite a lot of value, and he says he divides it up.
I said to them,
Well, wait, he says, Mike says, where did he get it from? It says he got it from the king. He got some of it from them, but it says he also got it from the people, right? And it says that these people, he got it from the king, his counselors, and all Israel who were present. So he's given this to go. He's given this as their departing prize, if you will, for leaving.
I said to them, you are consecrated to the Lord, and the vessels are consecrated, and the silver and gold are a freewill offering to the Lord God of your fathers. Guard them diligently until such time as you weigh them out in the presence of the officers of the priests and the Levites and the officers of the clans of Israel in Jerusalem in the chambers of the house of the Lord. So the priests and the Levites received the cargo of silver and golden vessels by weight to bring them to Jerusalem, to the house of our God. We set out for Jerusalem from the Ahava River on the 12th of the first month. We enjoyed the care of our God, who saved us from enemy ambush on the journey. We arrived in Jerusalem and stayed there 3 days. On the 4th day, the silver, gold, and vessels were weighed out in the house of God into the keeping of Meremoth, son of Uriah the priest, with whom was Eleazar, son of Phinehas. Josabad, son of Yeshua, and Noadiah, son of Benui, the Levites, were with them. Everything recorded as to number and weight, the entire cargo being recorded at that time. The returning exiles who arrived from captivity made burnt offerings to the God of Israel, 12 bulls for all Israel, 96 rams, 77 lambs, and 12 he-goats as a purification offering, all this a burnt offering to the Lord. They handed the royal orders to the king's satraps and the governors of the province of beyond the river, who gave support to the people and the house of God.
So again, we got permission to be here. We have permission to do all this. We have, look at all this stuff that the king gave us. So you can see that they're clearly, you know, this is a big deal. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. We're actually going to talk about it tomorrow night because tomorrow night is about the calendar. So they still no, don't know because some of you won't be there. Uh, um, so this is still talking about Nissan. This is talking about Passover. They in the Bible, and Ezra knows this. We are going to talk this part. We're going to get into more detail. The Bible itself never calls Rosh Hashanah the first of the month, ever. No part of the Bible says that. By the time of the Talmud, they don't say they cannot say Passover is, they don't say Nisan is not the first of the year, but they start to say it's the biblical year, it's not the civil year. It's not where it's, and we'll talk about why, though I will tell you right now, it's because of what happens in Babylon. It's because the power shifts from Egypt to Babylon. Um, so that's why you have that. That's why you have that. That's why you have that. But again, we'll get into more. But I guess one of the questions might be is like, so how long did it take, right? How long did this entourage take to get from, right? And again, it says that there's guys, but we're going to read there's also women and children as part of this journey. It probably took like 4 months. Yeah. So that is, and he kind of alludes to it earlier because when he says on the first day of the month up from Babylon was started, on the first day of the fifth month he arrived. So he kind of gave it away of how long it took, but yeah, it takes a while. And so let's take a look at now the big part of this, which is chapter 9. This is the part everybody remembers from this story. I mean, they remember Ezra and all the importance of getting permission to come back and all that, obviously. But what really stands out in people's minds is this chapter. So, yeah, he tells the story a little bit out of order because he's telling people that he got there already. But then again, this is the story of how he got there. And so it's a little out of order, some of the story, but it's all here. I mean, it's not all here, but the important parts are here. And this is the part that stands out in people's minds. So here we go. Here's the chapter.
When this was over, the officers approached me, saying, "The people of Israel and the priests and Levites have not separated themselves from the peoples of the land, whose abhorrent practices are like those of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. They have taken their daughters as wives for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed has become intermingled with the peoples of the land, and it is the officers and prefects who have taken the lead in this trespass."
Yeah. And so as I said, there's another part of the story where you have to read it and you have to read between the lines of what's really happening, which is that, and people do not like this chapter for a lot of reasons, mostly because they don't like this issue the way it's presented, that there's this intermarriage has been taking place. And it's not just like, they say, yeah, everybody's marrying these women and they're all worshiping other gods because that's the wives are the wives are doing. And he says, and the leadership is they're doing it just like everybody else. Actually, they say they've taken the lead in this, right? They're at the top. They're at the top of the list, these people, the leaders. Now, we know that the kings of Israel and Judah were always marrying outside of the people. So why would it be any different? King Solomon had lots of wives. Now, again, wasn't necessarily the best thing for him, but it's not like this is a new issue. Moses married a Gentile woman. Joseph married a Gentile woman. All these people that we read about in the Bible were marrying Canaanites and other people. Now, the issue is, of course, Boaz, King David's great grandmother was Ruth, right? So we know that these people, Canaanites and Moabites and Egyptians, interestingly, they didn't say Midianites, but beyond that list too. They were already intermarrying. We were already intermarrying with these people. But this is a big deal for Ezra. This is a big deal. And it isn't just the religious issue. I mean, what really, people, kind of get a little icky about is this, right? Right? They are their holy seed, their Zerah HaKodesh, has become intermingled with the Amei Haaretz. Now, it's clear that this is not just a ethnic issue. It's a religious issue. It's also, to some extent, a political issue because these people who are coming back, they don't care much for the people who never left. It doesn't say that people weren't Jewish, my friends. It says they were like those Canaanites and Hittites. They were like them. It doesn't say they were them. But okay, maybe they were intermarried too. But it seems as though what Ezra's really mad about is that the people who've been returning for the last couple of generations are marrying people who are not the exile group. So if you really read between the lines, it's not so much that they're marrying foreign women, though that's maybe part of it, but that they're marrying not the exiled community. That seems to be part of the issue. It's not just ethnic, it's not just religious, it's also political. We don't need those people. Because think about it. If your son marries one of these women who's never left, one of those people, your grandkids are going to be a mix. And we don't need those people in our bloodline. We want people who are us, who are this group of returned exiles. As I mentioned last week, think about it. If there were people who left this planet and then came back 200 years later and thought, I'm not going to mix with these people. I'm going to mix with these earth people who never left. They're low quality people. All the high quality people left with us. You can imagine the same thing happening. Well, it's the same mentality. And again, as I said, it's happened to some extent with other ethnic groups as well. Happened in our country. Jewish people who had been in America for an extra 40 years looked down on Jews who came during the waves of Ashkenazi Jews from, Poland and Russia. They looked down on them, called them greenhorns, called them kikes. Most of the really bad words for Jews were invented by other Jews who looked at their Jewish brothers and sisters as not brothers and sisters. They looked at them as people who were bringing down the quality when they'd only been here for a generation or two. But of course, they were a reminder, right? They were going backwards. They didn't need those people, which is why German Jews and Polish Jews and Ukrainian Jews they didn't meet. They didn't hook up in America. They didn't want those people. And they created separate synagogues for them, which is why the Reform Jews of St. Louis or Chicago or New York started conservative synagogues. They paid for them. Just keep them out of our synagogue. We don't want them in Temple Emmanuel. Let them go to some conservative synagogue. We don't need those Jews there. So, yeah, we did it. We did it again about 100 years ago, 110 years ago. We were not real welcoming. Well, I wouldn't say welcoming, but it definitely made us feel uncomfortable. So, yeah, we sometimes have this in our community. This is not our best moments, I think. So, what happens here with Ezra?
When I heard this, I rent my garment and robe. I tore hair out of my head and beard, and I sat desolate. Around me gathered all who were concerned over the words of the God of Israel because of the returning exiles' trespass, while I sat desolate until the evening offering. At the time of the evening offering, I ended my self-affliction. Still in my torn garment and robe, I got down on my knees and spread out my hands to the Lord my God and said, "Oh my God, I am too ashamed and mortified to lift my face to you, oh my God. For our iniquities are overwhelming and our guilt has grown as high as heaven. From the time of our fathers to this very day, we have been deep in guilt. Because of our iniquities, we, our kings and our priests, have been handed over to foreign kings, to the sword, to captivity, to pillage, and to humiliation, as is now the case. But now, for a short while, there has been a reprieve from the Lord our God, who has granted us a surviving remnant and given us a stake in his holy place. Our God has restored the luster to our eyes and furnished us with a little sustenance in our bondage. For bondsmen we are, though even in our bondage God has not forsaken us, but has disposed the king of Persia favorably toward us, to furnish us with sustenance and to raise again the house of our God, repairing its ruins and giving us a hold in Judah and Jerusalem.
Okay, so Ezra's argument so far is things are not always good for us, and it's because of us, right? He blames us. Our problems are because we are doing bad stuff. But we got a break. We got a break right now. We've caught a break, and let's not screw it up. We don't go backwards. You know, we're lucky, and the king of Persia happens to like us. Let's not ruin it. By the way, this mentality is very, very prevalent right now amongst the American Jewish community. I would almost say we understand this really, really, really well. There is definitely a feeling amongst American Jewry, especially now, because we've seen some signs of what happens when it's not so good. Because most of us only have heard stories about it, but we saw some signs. We've seen some things play out, right, in the last couple of years, where we said, "Wow, it could get like that again." We could see that. You can see that happening because it happened. It didn't happen on a global level. It didn't happen on a necessarily the people who are calling the shots or making these decisions, but it could happen, right? And so there's people who are saying, look, we got a window here. Let's not screw it up because we don't know how long this window is going to stay open for. Folks, I have to tell you, as a student of history, as someone who loves history, I'm not sure I disagree with that. I'm not sure I feel like we got a window right here, and I don't know how long it's going to last because I'm I'm pretty sure that human behavior hasn't changed a whole lot since we kind of emerged out of caves, and I don't think that the cyclical nature of history has changed a whole lot. And things go back and forth on a pendulum, and right now we're in a really good place considering. And again, it starts to look like maybe we can start to see that this is not the light at the end of the tunnel, but that's just the end of the light. The tunnel is is actually in front of us. So that's the thing that Ezra reminds the people of. We don't want to screw this up. And I think we're going to see more and more this reaction from people in the Jewish community saying, let's make sure we don't screw this up, right? Let's make sure we don't go back to the kinds of behavior that will make God turn on us. And then it does animate to some extent the situation of how some people in the Orthodox world feel that if we don't, if we start sliding, then we're gonna, this is part of the mentality of people, some people in Israel who say we better not lose this opportunity. We better not screw it up. The only argument you can make counter to that I think is pretty strong is it's not like the Jews who got this country in 1948 were that religious, right? It's not like we have been so religious that God has said, oh, this is the generation I'm going to reward with giving them Israel and giving them all these great things. Because honestly, are we better than the previous? Are we better than the generation that suffered during the Holocaust? Was that the backsliding generation that needed to be punished? Difficult to make that argument, my friends. So, yeah, I'm not saying that people don't make that. I'm not saying that there's like some leap you can make that justifies it, which is, okay, God just did it. We don't know why. We don't deserve it, but God did it. Let's not screw it up. There is that mentality. So just understand that this is very relevant, and it's as I read this, especially in the last this cycle of reading it, it hits home in a different way. So let's read what Ezra does.
Now, what can we say in the face of this, O our God? For we have forsaken your commandments, which you gave us through your servants, the prophets, when you said, the land that you are about to possess is a land unclean through the uncleanness of the peoples of the land, through their abhorrent practices, which they, in their impurity, have filled it from one end to the other. Now then, do not give your daughters in marriage to their sons, or let their daughters marry your sons. Do nothing for their well-being or advantage. Then you will be strong and enjoy the bounty of the land and bequeath it to your children forever.
Yeah, he just quoted Moses. He just quoted Moses from Deuteronomy, right? Which is, don't marry from the people of the land. Now, again, we know he's talking about the Canaanites, right? He's not really talking about Canaanites. He's talking about Jews who might have a little bit of Canaanite blood, or I'm not saying they're not, but he just said, let's do what Moses did, which is not marry from these people. Don't marry these people.
After all that has happened to us because of our evil deeds and our deep guilt, though you, our God, have been forbearing, punishing us less than our iniquity deserves, in that you have granted us such a remnant as this, shall we once again violate your commandments by intermarrying with these peoples who follow such abhorrent practices? Will you not rage against us till we are destroyed without remnant or survivor? O Lord God of Israel, you are benevolent, for we have survived as a remnant, as is now the case. We stand before you in all our guilt, for we cannot face you on this account.
Yep. And now we're going to finish it up. Because look at what these people get to do. And by the way, you can kind of guess what these people get to do, but we're going to read about it now. This is the last chapter.
While Ezra was praying and making confession, weeping and prostrating himself before the house of God, a very great crowd of Israelites gathered about him. men, women, and children. The people were weeping bitterly. Then Shechaniah, son of Yehiel of the family of Elam, spoke up and said to Ezra, "We have trespassed against our God by bringing into our homes foreign women from the peoples of the land. But there is still hope for Israel despite this. Now then, let us make a covenant with our God to expel all these women and those who have been born to them, in accordance with the bidding of the Lord and of all who are concerned over the commandment of our God, and let the teaching be obeyed. Take action, for the responsibility is yours, and we are with you. Act with resolve." So Ezra at once put the officers of the priests and the Levites and all Israel under oath to act accordingly, and they took the oath. Then Ezra rose from his place in front of the house of God and went into the chamber of Yehohanan, son of Eliashiv. There he ate no bread and drank no water, for he was in mourning over the trespass of those who had returned from exile. Then a proclamation was issued in Judah and Jerusalem that all who had returned from the exile should assemble in Jerusalem, and that anyone who did not come in 3 days would, by decision of the officers and elders, have his property confiscated and himself excluded from the congregation of the returning exiles. All the men of Judah and Benjamin assembled in Jerusalem in 3 days. It was the 9th month, the 20th of the month. All the people sat in the square of the house of God, trembling on account of the event and because of the rains.
Yeah. So it is the winter time. So it's raining. It's like December. Remember, because Nissan is usually March or April time. So this is 9 months later. It's like February. I mean, December to January. So it's raining, and they're scared.
Then Ezra the priest got up and said to them, "You have trespassed by bringing home foreign women, thus aggravating the guilt of Israel. So now make confession to the Lord, God of your fathers, and do his will and separate yourselves from the peoples of the land and from the foreign women." The entire congregation responded in a loud voice, "We must surely do just as you say. However, many people are involved and it is the rainy season. It is not possible to remain out in the open, nor is this the work of a day or two, because we have transgressed extensively in this matter. Let our officers remain on behalf of the entire congregation, and all our townspeople who have brought home foreign women shall appear before them at scheduled times, together with the elders and judges of each town, in order to avert the burning anger of our God from us on this account." Only Yonatan, son of Asahel, and Yatzahiah, son of Tikvah, remained for this purpose, assisted by Meshullam and Shabbatai, the Levites. The returning exiles did so. Ezra the priest and the men who were the chiefs of the ancestral clans, all listed by name, sequestered themselves on the first day of the 10th month to study the matter. By the first day of the first month, they were done with all the men who had brought home foreign women. Among the priestly families who were found to have brought foreign women were Yeshua, son of Yozadak, and his brothers Maaseiah, Eleazar, Yarib, and Gedaliah. They gave their word to expel their wives, and acknowledging their guilt, offered a ram from the flock to expiate it. Of the sons of Immer, Hanani and Zebediah. Of the sons of Harim, Maaseiah, Elijah, Shemaiah, Yehiel, and Uzziah. Of the sons of Pashur, Elonai, Maaseiah, Ashmael, Nathanael, Josabad, and Elisah. Of the Levites, Josabad, Shimei, Kaliah, who is Kalita, Petahiah, Judah, and Eleazar. Of the singers, Eliashib. Of the gatekeepers, Shalom, Telem, and Uri. Of the Israelites, of the sons of Parosh, Ramiah, Isaiah, Malchiah, Miyamin, Eleazar, Malchiah, and Benaiah. Of the sons of Elam, Mattaniah, Zechariah, Yehiel, Abdi, Yeremot, and Elijah. Of the sons of Zatu, Eloenai, Eliashib, Mattaniah, Yeremot, Zabad, and Aziza. Of the sons of Bavai, Yehohanan, Hananiah, went too fast. Of the sons of Bani, Meshulam, Maluk, Adiah, Yashuv, Sheal, and Ramot. Of the sons of Pahat Moav, Adnah, Halal, Benaiah, Messiah, Mattaniah, Bezalel, Binui, and Manasseh. Of the sons of Harim, Eliezer, Ishiah, Malchiah, Shemaiah, and Shimeon. Also Benjamin, Maluk, and Shemariah. Of the sons of Hashum, Mattanai, Mattatah, Zavad, Eliphelet, Jeremiah, Manasseh, and Shimei. Of the sons of Benai, Maadai, Amram, and Uel. Of the sons of Benaiah, Bediah, Chelahu, Benaiah, Meramot, Eliashiv, Mattaniah, Mattanai, Yaasai, Bani, Benui, Shimei, Shalemiah, Natan, Adiah, Machnadabai, Shashai, Sharai, Azarel, Shelemiah, Shemariah, Shalom, Amariah, and Joseph. Of the sons of Nebo, Yeiel, Mattithiah, Zavad, Zabina, Zadai, Joel, and Benaiah. All these who had married foreign women, among whom were some women who had borne children.
And they all lived happily ever after. That's the end. Yeah, I meant to tell you, Rosemary, there was also chapter 10 coming up. That's the end. Now, again, it's not really the end because the book of Nehemiah is not separate. You can tell. You don't end a book like that. First of all, you don't end a book like that because it's a gut punch. These are the people, they just outed everybody who married somebody who wasn't from the group. So what's interesting, of course, is it doesn't matter who the women were married to. If they had daughters, they went through the sons and who they are married to. Because at this point in time, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago on our first class on Wednesday night, it was the father who determined your ancestry. Your father determined your Judaism. Your father determined whether you're a Kohen or a Levi, your tribal designation. It was all done by father. So the fathers here, the husbands are forced to divorce their wives. This is not my favorite part of the Bible. This is very, very upsetting. This, had to happen. And for Ezra, it's a way for the community to be protected. But it seems a little ethnocentric, to put it mildly. It seems to be problematic from the standpoint of, again, look, some people say, yeah, but it's because they were worshiping other gods and he doesn't want them to have that. Okay, I get that. That's legitimate. It's not like that wasn't an issue, but that doesn't seem to be the real issue. It seems to be the real issue is that we cannot let our DNA, we cannot let our background, what we call it in Hebrew or in Yiddish, our yichus, we can't let it get diminished by marrying beneath us, and especially by marrying into a group of people who have a different agenda than we do. They are not us. They are not the people that have returned to reclaim this area and to be the power of this area. Because again, part of this is not about religion. It's not about ethnicity. It's not about DNA. It's about power. And we don't need these people to come back into power through us. Your daughter, your son married a woman. They have a son. And now that son, because his other grandfather was one of the people that never left, now this guy's going to have power? We can't afford that. You know what's happening here. This is to make sure that the people who are in power don't lose power. And these are a group of people who, again, to some extent, have returned from the exile, right? They have no intention of losing their share of the power. We don't want to lose control of the temple. We don't need to go backwards. We control the temple right now. We're building the temple. We're going to own it. We're going to control it. And we don't need these people to be part of our group. So that's what happens. It's a very disturbing thing. But again, put it into context. It's not about ethnicity. It is very much about power. It's about making sure that these people don't have power. And again, it's happened with every ethnic group that's ever existed. It happened in this country. It happened in California. It happens to this day. So apologize for the the seemingly racial, racist issue that goes on here. But again, not something that's that foreign to us in the history of the Jewish people. So tomorrow night we'll be in person for Wednesday night class. We'll be looking at the holidays, looking at the Jewish calendar, why the Jewish calendar is different, how it's different. It's going to be much easier to go through this subject as it was than it was last week when we talked about God and we talked about the previous week about Jewish identity. Doing that in 90 minutes was a lot tougher. So tomorrow is a little bit easier to go through those facts. But again, it's perfect time as we get into Rosh Hashanah and the new year, at least the new year that we follow, which is not necessarily the new year in the Bible. So thank you, Rosemary, for leading us in going through this book. And again, kind of normal when we finish a book, we say Tam v'nishalem tehillah el borei olam, but this is kind of like an in-between thing. So we'll just say we give thanks to God for finishing this book, but again, it's not really finishing. Next week, we will be starting the book in Nehemiah, but we are not in person. So only this only applies to the people who come. We are going to be doing the class. I won't be in town, but we will be at 9 o'clock doing class. Just know that. So we will be here at 9 o'clock, not in here, but online. So for the vast majority of you who are online, it doesn't matter. But for those who do come in person sometimes, like John and Gloria are here virtually, we will be doing class at 9, but we'll be virtual. Next Wednesday, we will be in person. Yeah. And then the following Wednesday on the 10th, we'll be doing class. We won't be having class on the 10th. That Wednesday night, I'll be out of town and I'll be on a plane during that time. So I can't do Wednesday night. All right, everybody. And don't forget Beatles Shabbat, September 5th. It's going to be here before we know it. This will be a lot of fun. So make sure you're here if you can be for Friday night, September 5th with Wendy. And most importantly, with the members of Monkey Bump who are going to be doing Rich and his friends. All right, everybody, take care and have a great month of Elul. We're officially in the month of Elul. And have a great month of Elul as we gear up to the high holidays. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
All
See you
you.
tomorrow. See you tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
Thank-
night. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Oh, yeah.